Hey, Sugar Drama here, and so right up front. I'm gonna tell you that you know this really shocked me when I found this out. Um, so I told you guys that I had a surgery a couple of years ago, and when I did, I saw a nutritionist. And when I went and saw this nutritionist, the very first thing that the nutritionist said is, "Hey, I want you to get the USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture, daily intake recommended, intake guide." And start seeing where you're at. And this takes some work on your part. You're going to have to do the work to figure out where you are on daily intake. And those are going to be the different vitamins, the different minerals, the different, the amounts of protein, the amounts of carbohydrates that you have. And, he absolutely wanted me to use U.S. Department of Agriculture, no other guide. Okay. And so somewhere in the conversation, I can't remember if it was right then or not, I said something about FDA recommended. And it's funny because I had seen it on one of my kids asked for a specific cereal, and it said contains all the FDA recommended daily vitamins, right? So he absolutely was against using the FDA recommendations. And what he went on to tell me was that the Food and Drug Administration, these companies that are regulated, okay, get this, companies regulated by the FDA actually have to pay a fee to be regulated, and then in exchange, or as a byproduct, they get to have their personnel who represent their company sit on committees that make recommendations. This is like telling your kid that you're giving them a bedtime and then just letting your kid decide what the bedtime is. It's crazy. Like, who would actually say we're going to regulate you, but you get to decide what we're regulating? That's just nuts, okay? And so if you'll go back and you'll look at, you can Google it and find different articles, and it will tell you that the FDA really only overturns the recommendations of their committees about 1/4 of the time. So 3/4 of the time, these companies get to have their way with you. And they get to do whatever they want with the food supply. If you'll look at the food supply in the United States, there are several agents that they use for coloring food. There are several things that they use to preserve food that are not allowed in any other nation in the world. And it's just nuts that we would take that on and allow that to happen to our people. So the U.S. Department of Agriculture is a much purer form of recommendation for daily intake of food, daily intake of vitamins, daily intake of minerals. It's not, adulterated by committees that are paid for by the people who are making the recommendations for you. I'll just say this, that if you'll take the time to look through the USDA, and the USDA makes these recommendations, and they generally have a lifespan of about 5 years. The last recommendation that came out, the first book that I worked off of, was 2015 to 2020. So here we are, 2021. We should have a new USDA recommended daily intake guide coming out. The other thing to pay attention to is that USDA recommended daily intake guide is based off of somebody who's about 110 pounds. So most days I'm walking around, I'm a little bit in excess of that. So, if it was to say you were to have 4 milligrams of something, in my case, I would need 8 milligrams of it, because I would have to double the dose, because I'm generally walking around at about 220 pounds. Okay. So use the USDA recommendation, and then understand that it's based off of somebody who's about 110 pounds. Okay. But man, like, who in the world would tell you that they're going to regulate somebody and then allow the person who's supposed to be regulated make all the recommendations? That was just crazy to me. Again, I'm not a giant conspiracy theorist. I do think that the government plays hokey sometimes, but to allow the companies that are supposedly being regulated to be the ones to make the recommendations didn't sit well with me. And I've been assured by the nutritionist who I use, that's not the case with the USDA. The USDA makes recommendations separate and apart from the influence of the industry that actually makes the food, and those recommendations are a far more pure form of nutritional recommendations. So that would be my first nutrition advice for anybody, would be to boil down what your diet looks like. You'll come to find out, guys, as much as you may think that you have a pretty varied diet, I thought I had a pretty varied diet when I started looking into it. I was really only eating about 14 different types of things throughout all the meals that I was having. And to date, that's probably pretty consistent, is somewhere between a dozen and 14 different meals. And then, you know, you can start dissecting those meals. You're gonna have to put in work, but you can start dissecting those meals and figure out what it is that you're deficient in, so that you know exactly, you know, if you need to supplement, what direction you need to go in the supplement. Now, by all means, food is king. If you can get the vitamins, minerals, and the protein and the carbohydrates and everything else that you need to through actual intake of real food, that's always best. But if it's just a case where you're just not going to be able to do it, then supplementation is the next option, next best option. All right. So just thought I would share that with you. If you're looking for good, solid nutritional advice, do not go with the FDA. Go with the USDA daily recommended intake guide. Again, there should be a new one coming out this year. All right. I hope that helps. Trigger Trauma, I hope you have a good week.